but they should be, you know, still pretty close. I still am going to use the scale every time. Okay, let's see here. So now we're just trying to integrate the saved starter into the water. You really kind of want it to be partially dissolved in the water so that it's going to be everywhere when you put the flour in here. So this will take a little bit. Another thing you can do is, I have one time when I was feeding it, instead of throwing all of it away like you just saw me do, I also saved a chunk and put it in a Ziploc bag, actually a vacuum sealed bag, but Ziploc would be fine too, and put it in the freezer. And now I have a little bit of this starter frozen in case I ever accidentally kill this. You know, I'd be super sad because this is like, whatever, 9 months of work. And so you can freeze starter, and then you can probably have it frozen there for like a year or two, I think. You can also actually spread it out real thin and dry it out on something. So make a super thin layer and let it to dry, and then crumble that up, and you can have like starter dust. And I guess that's supposedly shelf stable and will last for years in case you kill it. You could use that to reanimate it. And as soon as this starter is going really good again, I'm going to actually take another sample and put it in the freezer and ditch the older one that's probably 4 months old or so. Okay, so we're good there. We'll turn our scale back on now. So I gave it 180 grams of water. I'm going to give it 100 grams of AP flour. 102, that's fine. I'm going to give it 70 grams of wheat. Your starter can be anything you want, but it should probably somewhat mirror your dough you're making. So whatever dough mix you use most often, at some point you will consider having your starter mimic that, because then, you know, you're sort of adding the same flavors from your starter as you do from your dough mix. And then we'll do 30 grams of the rye flour. So you can see if you actually go look, the percentages are kind of flipped on between the rye and the wheat. I could probably flip them, but this stuff is like more expensive, harder to get, and makes everything a lot stickier. So, and I forgot how I came to this mixture. I think it was based off of something I read online, or something I have gone and actually talked to bakers at 2 of my favorite bakeries and asked them a bunch of questions, because at first I was not getting good results. I didn't know why, and I really think now that had all to do with just the starter not being ready, but I can't tell you that for sure, because I've only gone from no starter to starter one time. One thing that one of the bakers told me to do was have just a pure AP flour starter for a while and not put any other flours in it, because that would make the yeast have an easier time taking over and becoming super active. So I did do that for a little bit. I don't know if that worked or not. It did seem to, but it was also around the time where maybe my starter was just finally becoming very active. And then I've been messing with the starter a lot to try to get more sour flavor, which is done by favoring the yeast that produced acetic acid. Okay, so that's good enough. It's mixed. Now for baking, for getting ready to bake, what I would do is, and so this is not important now because I'm just going to put this in the fridge, but if I was doing this the night before to get ready to bake today, I would kind of smooth out the top, because mine is pretty dry, so it's pretty it's not going to flow like a high hydration. So I want it to be flat so that I can put a rubber band or a piece of tape and see how much it's grown. You know, if it's a big peak in the middle, I have to kind of do more of an estimation of, okay, well, where is its starting point? Okay, so that's it, and it's ready to go in the fridge, and then I'll just leave it in the fridge for about a week and take it out and feed it once, and then either bake with it or just put it back in. Generally, I bake with it. I do bake about a loaf a week. Okay, we're back. It's been 30 minutes, so time for our first stretch and fold. You can see it's just kind of a lump on the bottom, and eventually it will be able to maintain some roundness. So that's what we're trying to do now, is build up that gluten structure. So I do wet my hand, shake it off really good though. Try not to add too much water to the dough. It's gonna stick either way, but this will help you get a little ways. I like to go around 3/4 of it and like unstick it from the bowl. And then I get under and pull it over and fold it. And then I kind of just go around and do that all the way around. The last one is a problem because it doesn't have as much of a stick to it. Okay, so there's a couple things you can just keep doing that, which is what I do. I should say there's also this cool coil fold thing, which I've been meaning to experiment with. I haven't had much luck with it because of the way it sticks in this container, but the coil fold, you come underneath from 2 sides and you kind of lift, and it should stretch because of that on both sides. And then I think you just plop it back and then you rotate it 90 degrees and then you do that again. But you can see mine doesn't stick enough to do a good coil fold. So I still kind of get it to stick and then fold it over on itself. And then I just try to go around and do that from a bunch of angles. Nobody does this, but I have also, I haven't seen this anywhere, but you can kind of just pull it and fold it over and pull it. I don't know if there's some reason not to do that, but sometimes I do that some. And you can see it's pretty, I can get like that much out of it without it sticking super bad. And then you can either go back and add some more water to your hands, which is what I would do when I used to do this. Now I generally just let it get sticky and get it all over. And, I probably lose a little bit, but then I'm not going constantly back and forth and adding water. I'm mostly just doing this right now to dry off my left hand. Since normally I only use my right hand and my left hand just holds the bowl. But yeah, it's not much more complicated than that. You should probably do this for like a minute or two. So we're not doing this that much because at this point we're not going to be able to build that much gluten off of, this one. We need to do this and then let it rest, and then do this and then let it rest. Okay, at this stage it doesn't really matter how you leave it in the bowl because again there's not enough structure to do anything yet, but at later stages we will be trying to start to build a taut skin, which will help trap the gases in as it expands, so that we'll get a nice loaf at the end. Okay, it is only 4:30, so it's not even quite as has not been quite as long as I expected. I think my bread dough is progressing faster, maybe because of the temperature. It might be slightly warmer in here. It doesn't appear to be. It may be because I put more water in. I don't know, but we have in this bowl 50-50 rice flour and AP flour, which is really great for dusting. Let's see. First, I'll actually get you guys to take a look at how big this dough has gotten. You can see it's just completely filling the bowl now. It's very jiggly. I don't know how well you can see that, but if I shake it, it's got a lot of jiggle. It's got a lot of air in there. And we're going to lose most of that air when we plop it out onto here, but that's fine. That's normal. Okay, so just going to put down a nice little coat of flour here. Again, you don't really have to use the sifting method. You can just kind of throw some on there, but I don't know. I like doing it. Okay. Get your, might as well dust this thing with flour too while we're at it. So just kind of get that everywhere. And then what I like to do too is I like to kind of rotate it, and there's a lot extra in here from previous rounds because I don't really clean it out in between. So I don't want too much extra because I don't want a bunch, because a lot of it will stick to the loaf, and it kind of makes a cool pattern, but I don't really want a bunch of extra dough, extra dry flour on the outside of my dough. It won't really wreck it though. Okay. That should do it. You do want to make sure it's not going to stick too much, because it sucks when you turn this over onto some parchment paper and then you have to bang it and shake it and it's not coming out. Okay, let's go back over here now. And we will try, oh, here's 2 more tools that I forgot to mention. Also not necessary, but bench scrapers are pretty cool. I'm only going to use this one because it's rounded to try to help me get that out. And then this one I'll use for shaping, because the less you touch it, the less it, I don't know, I feel like it sticks to metal a little bit less than my hand. Oh yeah, speaking of which, probably want to get this on your hands a little bit, get this on those as much as you can. And it is even good to sprinkle a little bit around the edge where you're going to try to release it from the bowl. I've also tried, I tried oiling the bowl once, and that worked really good, and I did have a bunch of oil everywhere, but it still made a good loaf, so you could oil your bowl. Okay, so this is going to deflate like crazy. Actually, it already is. I'm going to turn this out. Try to get it to not stick too much. Oh, it smells good though. I can smell it all fermenty. Okay. Not bad. Okay, so we have our very elastic and much reduced size here. And we're kind of gonna fold the sides in. You can do this without the bench scraper totally, but I don't know, I like using it. Then we're gonna try to pull this part all the way up and all the way over and make a little seam on the bottom. And then we're gonna roll it. So now we have the seam on the bottom. And we're gonna try to make a somewhat taut surface so that, again, as it expands, it will pull taut and we'll get a nice crust. Now, it is best if you can kind of pinch your pinkies under and rotate and pull towards you. You do need it to stick to the surface somewhat. So what I'm doing right now is kind of, yeah, there we go. I'm trying to get it to so it's got all this flour from the cutting board, and I want it to stick so I can get some surface tension. And then you saw I just popped a big bubble. You should definitely pop bubbles on the outside for now. We do want bubbles inside. We don't really care about bubbles outside. They will just lead to, what will they lead to? They'll lead to crust that's bubbled out and probably cooks more faster than it should. Okay, now it's starting to get hard to do. So I'm gonna try to use this to still, because I really still wanna get it to kind of, you can see this is sticking too. But this is what I want right here. Kind of going around in a circle and drawing it towards me. And yeah, this is pretty good, not bad. Okay, it's super sticking on the bottom. And I think I'm gonna just let it rest like this now. Okay, I will sprinkle a little bit around the top to make sure, to prevent sticking. And that should be good. Now, we don't want it to dry out, so I'm gonna get a clean dish towel. I'm gonna get it pretty wet in the middle, but then I'm gonna wring it out as much as possible. So I don't really wanna add water either to it. I just want it to keep doing what it's doing. So now I have a nice wet spot in the middle of this dish towel, and I'm gonna drape that over and let it rise again. It's gonna get pretty big again. What I really want is, I want it to be about this big. You know, that's not really critical at all, but I want it to rise again. What we're doing is, we let a lot of the gas out, we shaped it, and that's gonna let it it's gonna keep developing more gas, and it's gonna keep developing more flavor. And then once it's big enough to fit in this, we'll put it in the fridge, and that will kill its growth, and it will continue to develop a little more flavor overnight while it's in the fridge. And then tomorrow we'll bake it. We have now been, it's been 2.5 hours, it's been 3 hours, which is really, again, things are progressing faster than they should be, or than I thought, but this is giant again, and it should still fit in here, because it'll probably lose some, But now I just wanted to quick show you how to get it in the basket. Hopefully I show you good. Kind of want to unstick it from the board. It's really painful when it sticks and you try to pull it off. Hopefully it doesn't. We'll see right here. Okay, so now it's unstuck. It feels good. Oh yeah, nope, that was bad. So that's gonna have to be how it goes for this loaf. This loaf is definitely not one of my best. I think I'm gonna put it in its bag and let it sit out for another hour or two and see if it will grow again, which it probably will. And then we'll still just bake it tomorrow and see what happens. Okay everyone, we're back. It's the next morning. The oven has been preheating to 475 for an hour with the cast iron in it. And we're gonna do the final steps now. The loaf of bread has been hanging out in here overnight in the fridge. Let's see what it looks like. It looks pretty good. Once we cut into it, we'll find out if it got overproofed or not, because it'll deflate pretty good if it got overproofed, which it may have. Just got a normal razor here like I use for shaving, and that's what I'm gonna use to score it. As I said, you can use a knife, that will work just fine too. And then I've got a piece of parchment paper down here. Just flip it over. And that's what it looks like before. Yeah, you can see it's deflated some. That may have happened actually when I put it in. And it has this nice round pattern from the basket. So that's if you're wondering how bakeries or people get that, it's just from the basket. It's not something I actually try to do, but it happens anyways. And then scoring is actually really fun. You should probably go watch a bunch of videos on YouTube about scoring. There's a lot of different patterns. You can try them out and see what you like. My current favorite right now is just a big cross. You do want to get it a good like 1/4 inch or a little bit more deep. The scoring is more than just you looking pretty. If you don't score it at all, the steam has to escape somewhere and it will blow out somewhere around the bottom generally and come shooting out, and you'll just have a nice ragged tear. So this is just a slightly more pretty way of letting it out, but it also kind of makes it more controlled, and yeah, you get a better pattern. Also, one thing to think about with scoring is cutting the bread. If you make a non-symmetrical pattern, then when you go to cut the bread later, you could have a little bit of trouble cutting through where there's a weird pattern, but you should just try different scores that look pretty and see what you like. Okay, and then now the cast iron's been all preheated, you just gotta plop it in. It's really that simple. Be very careful not to burn yourself. I think a lot of people occasionally burn themselves, and that'll stay with you for several days, a burn like that. Okay. We're gonna bake it at 475 for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna take the lid off and turn it down to 450 and bake it for 15 more minutes. So a total of 45 minutes. There's a couple different things you might want to do in there. Sometimes the crust is a bit dark for some of my family's taste, so sometimes I bake it at 465 for the first 30 minutes. And also another thing I've experimented with is putting a sheet pan under the cast iron right when I put it in to try to slow down how fast the bottom heats up, because the bottom of the crust specifically will get the most done, at least in my oven and with my setup. Okay, the bread has baked. It's been, and let's see how it turned out. It's not too bad for not my best loaf. So this probably looks like a great loaf to you if you haven't been baking your own yet. To me, it looks pretty sad. It's not as tall as it should be. It's not a even roundness. You can see it's it's fallen in on itself, so that's why it's definitely overproofed. It's pretty hot. You know, it'll be tasty. I'm definitely gonna eat it. I'm not too sad. I'm just sad because this is, you know, a tutorial video, and if I got a nice, perfect, tall loaf for you guys, it would have been more impressive, but you still learned everything you need to see. You can see it's pretty short. It should be like at least a third taller for me, and probably some people might be getting nearly double as high as this. But yeah, it looks good. It's gonna be tasty, and hopefully that's all your. Hopefully that's a helpful video for you guys.